Modern Warfare multiplayer was officially revealed to the world. We've had a couple of installments where we heard a little bit more about not only just the campaign and the things that we heard about earlier in the year, but also with MP being fully revealed, probably the biggest part that a lot of players will stick around with throughout the year. There's a lot up on deck and a lot to digest. I'm sure that you've heard probably a ton of information about it already, but today I wanted to kind of take a look at the lesser known things and 10 things you didn't know about Modern Warfare to go a little bit deeper into a dive of some of the more trivial information and some of the things that are a little more fascinating. So before we jump into this, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Would you guys like to see more of this style of content? Anything relating to Modern Warfare you'd like to see in particular? Whatever it is, feel free to let me know. But that said, let's jump into the first thing you may not have known about. There were a couple of things that Infinity Ward set out to kind of shake up the core gameplay dynamic within Modern Warfare, and probably the biggest one that you've noticed so far is that of no minimap. That, of course, is something that's going to take a lot of adjusting for a lot of players, but again, I've said it before, once you end up jumping into a couple of games, you start to get used to it, and with personal UAV, it really isn't that bad. But another thing that I don't think I've seen talked about at all is actually two items in particular that allow for the delay of enemy health regeneration, which will be really curious to see how this works out, if it's altered at all between now and the launch of the game. But you end up having two things in particular that can work out here for this, one being a perk, one being a weapon perk. Now in the perk 3 selection, you end up seeing the perk called Shrapnel. Along with this, you have others: Amped, Battle Hardened, Cold Blooded, High Alert, and Spotter. But Shrapnel stands out because you end up spawning with an extra piece of lethal equipment, plus explosive damage delays enemy health regeneration. Now this one is a very situational based thing, but the very idea that explosive damage doesn't allow players to heal as fast is certainly something we've never seen before. This one in particular I'm not really too worried about, but it's the curveball that you might not have ever considered. But again, for this to be something that takes place, you need to have the perk, and you also need to land explosive damage on somebody, assuming you don't kill them already. So the room for concern isn't as big as the next one. That being when you go over to the weapon perks, this one found on some weapons. I'm not entirely sure if all, but I found it on specifically the M4A1 whenever I used this and went around the gun bench looking at things. There is the weapon perk called Frangible Wounding, in which it allows bullets to cause target healing to be briefly delayed. Now, same effect as what we saw with Shrapnel, but this one from a gun, something that you normally see in most engagements, probably something you see 10, 20, 30, maybe even more times than that than ever taking damage by an explosive. So while this is something that does have to contend with other weapon perks like Sleight of Hand, FMJ, Stance Training, Fast Melee, and your burst selection options, it is something that does have a strange effect that we've never really seen up until this point within Call of Duty, and I'm curious to see how it ends up playing out. And we'll probably see a little bit more about that in the beta, but that's something you may not have known about. Number 2, though, let's talk about this, is the create a class system in general. We know that we have 5 attachments available for both your primary and secondary, and everything else is kind of guaranteed. Your lethal, tactical, your perks, none of that stuff has to battle for places in your create a class like it would have with, say, a pick 10. But one thing that was actually up on the cutting room floor was the decision to keep or discard the classic bling perk from Modern Warfare. Previous builds ended up having 4 attachments, and then that bling perk would allow you to have the 5th one, but they decided to just let you roll with it and keep all 5. Something that after today you probably won't hear much about because the change has already been made, but it was a curious little piece of trivial information that certainly proves, I think, fascinating from a developmental end. Number 3, we're going to talk about how you can select your kill streaks. Now, kill streaks have always worked pretty much where just on your up and down on your D-pad, you can scroll through and select your different kill streaks that you have either racked up, whether that be moving down 1, 2, or in some cases 3, depending on the game you're on. But this game doesn't work like that. Instead, you have a scroll wheel for your kill streaks this time around, which you can get to by holding down the right arrow on your D-pad, but then you can end up scrolling around to whatever 3 streaks you have active here at this, and this will be the new way that you can select your kill streaks during this year of Modern Warfare. The reasoning as for why it's just not a simple up and down motion on your D-pad is because of the inclusion of the NVGs, or night vision goggles, within Modern Warfare, and a lot of this is going to be used within the night maps, in particular within Modern Warfare, which there seems to be multiple of these coming at launch. But to activate the night vision goggles, it's simply down on your D-pad. So you can see where the overlap would create a problem and where you could very easily kick on your night vision goggles when you didn't want to, if you had to try try and utilize both of those for the same thing. So naturally, something else was added in, and this might indicate something like an emote wheel coming at some point in time during the year, but that is way too speculative and way too out there that we don't know of anything like that happening just yet. But that is how you're going to be selecting your kill streaks. And talking a little kill streaks a little bit further, it's also interesting to note that kill streaks will not wrap this year. So if you end up having a personal UAV, a UAV in, say, a cluster strike, that's your 3, 4, and 5 kill streaks. But then if you end up going on, say, a 20 kill streak, you won't end up having those things wrap again, to which you can get multiple of them. So that's something that is a curious decision made by Infinity Ward, but it's very similar then to Modern Warfare 2, and Modern Warfare Remastered, where they're trying to take it back to the roots, if you want to call it that, even though it might not be everybody's favorite cup of tea. Now, there are things included within the perks that can alter how you end up interacting with your streaks. The perk Kill Chain is a great way to ensure that you'll end up getting the most, though, out of those kill streaks that you may have, because if you're playing for higher streaks, like, say, the Chopper Gunner, the Support Helo, or the Juggernaut, those being your 10, 11, and 15 kill streaks, if you end up having the perk Kill Chain active in your loadout, those streaks kills will compound towards your next ones, like they did in Modern Warfare 2. So whether or not the nuke is something that is going to be a selectable one, or it's going to be a gun kill only one, we don't know just yet, but it's very possible you could end up having a situation where you end up getting your Harrier Strike, your Chopper Gunner, and your nuke again, but in 2019. So that's stuff you also got to consider as well. But let's talk a little bit about some things that are, again, lesser known here at this one. We don't have necessarily a kill streak counter like we did in Modern Warfare. That was actually one of the things that I really did enjoy out of that game, and it was a subtle detail that not many really cared for, but I always enjoyed to see just how long I was with that. And from an editing perspective, if you're trying to clip down a couple of streaks, it's way easier to see the number right there and progressively go up with you, instead of just having to say, I think I got that kill, I don't think I died there, if you're scrubbing past footage really quickly. But anyways, we don't have anything like that this time around, but we do have a kill counter that will flash after every single kill for about a second or so after you get that. It takes the idea of that kill streak counter from Modern Warfare, but is less obstructive and only pops up when you get a kill right in the bottom middle of your HUD. So that's something that right by where that calling card of whoever you ended up killing pops up, it'll say first kill, second kill, third kill, so on and so forth. The next thing we'll talk about is that of operators can be seen in the pre-game lobby. If I were to guess, I would almost imagine this works exactly like how it does in Black Ops 4 come post-launch, where it'll be easily tethered to, say, custom uniforms, camos, and other things like that we see within Black Ops 4. It'll be a way to showcase kind of like a communal space we saw first within Advanced Warfare, and then saw taken to the heights of the headquarters, but then brought down to just in-game menus within Black Ops 4. So continuing that trend a little further, and probably again showcasing some of that customization that'll be available. Now, talking about the menus in-game and pre-game lobbies again, you can end up seeing that there's an in-game chat function like there is on PC, but it's also for all platforms. It can be seen in the menus. I don't know just yet if it's something you could do in-game, but it is something that looks to take that sort of cross-platform mentality and including some of the things we normally only see on PC, but also then putting it on the console version as well. So if we get a chat client in-game, can we get an FOV slider? Wink, wink. I'd be all for that, Infinity Ward. The next thing outside of that, though, is one that isn't as trivial, but is something that does have some gameplay implications here for this. That being that you can change your classes actually in-game. You can adjust how you end up having loadouts right there in the middle of a game. Whenever you open up your menu to select a different class or to change your class, you'll also end up seeing that there is a little bit of a pencil icon that can indicate you being able to edit this. This is where you can then jump into the gunsmith and change some things around for your loadout right there again without having to leave that match, which will be interesting, but I'm hoping that it doesn't bring back too many flashbacks of one-man army or something like that. So we'll have to see how that one works out, and if there's a limit to editing or a limit to what all you can edit, but that's something that is available right now. Next up, we'll talk about the Snapshot Grenade, which is a lesser used piece of equipment that I've seen not really anybody else talk about, but this will end up, if you tag somebody with it, giving off an oracle effect very similar to Call of Duty Ghosts, where you can end up seeing the outline of the player, but it was something that didn't last near as long as the oracle. It was only lasted for about 1 to 2 seconds, maybe 3 at max here at this one, and we didn't get enough time to really test this out, but I would imagine that things like Cold-Blooded allow for that to be completely negated, where you aren't seen by this at all. So take your Vision Pulse, take your Oracle, and kind of wrap it all into one throwable grenade, but will only last for about 2 seconds, and you only end up having them, of course, as many as you get per life. Now, the final thing we'll talk about is crossplay, how it works, a little bit more information on it, and what we learned of from the reveal event firsthand, and some of the stuff out there as well that's since been announced amount since its first introduction. Firstly, it is input-based. So this is something that if you're playing with controllers, you're going to be matched against other controller players. If you're playing with a mouse and keyboard on PlayStation 4, which it actually will support that natively, it won't be something that you need to get any kind of converter or anything special like that, but you can end up playing with mouse and keyboard players against other mouse and keyboard players. That is the primary way that you'll be matched up. So that was a big concern I saw a lot of people talking about, but we also know for a fact this works between Xbox One, PlayStation 4, and PC. At the reveal event, we ended up having PlayStation 4s and PCs playing together, but that was something that was probably just because of that exclusivity deal. When we played at the studio back in May, we had all three platforms available there, Xbox One, PlayStation 4, and PC, so don't worry about that. You will still be able to play with absolutely everybody, and it seems like joining your friends cross-play come launch will be integrated via your Call of Duty or Activision account. One thing that I noticed whenever we were joining up on people at the reveal event was that in this build of the game, we had the ability to join via folders of friends, one being labeled as Activision and one being labeled as your friends. For this one, just presumably though, PlayStation 4. So any friend you have exclusively on PlayStation 4 be in that folder, and then Activision friends or Call of Duty account friends would be in that top folder. And the nice thing is that that Activision or Call of Duty one was actually prioritized. So if you want to play with your Call of Duty friends from across the console pond, you'll be able to with relative ease. And being that they were folders, it seemed like you could close them rather easily as well, so you didn't have to scroll through 100+ names before you got to your PlayStation 4 friends or your Xbox One friends, whatever platform you may be on. But anyways, that's where we're gonna wrap it up. That's been 10 things you may not know about within Modern Warfare, both in-game and some of the other technical facts here related to it. But that said, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Is there anything in particular that you knew out of these? Any that you really were kind of surprised about? And would you guys like to see more things like this? I got another episode planned if you guys want to see it already, so I can get right on making that one if you guys want to see more. But let me know your thoughts. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure you drop a like down below. And of course, if you are new to the channel, make sure you guys subscribe so you don't miss a single thing regarding all things Modern Warfare, all things Call of Duty. We got you covered the best of updates, news, information, tips, tricks, all that good stuff. So if any of that interests you, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a single thing. If you guys also want to follow me over on Twitter and Instagram, those are the best place to get connected outside of YouTube. Probably live on both those. So if you guys want to strike up a conversation, ask me a question, whatever it may be, that link is down there in the description below. Well, let's end out. Thank you guys all so much for watching. Mine has been Espresso. See you guys later. Take care and peace.